Hey guys, welcome to the Neglected Podcast. This podcast is not to change your mind, but to invite you into somebody else's narrative. This is a podcast to give a voice to the neglected. It is also an opportunity for all of us to engage.
How to speak to that? I think that's the phrase you gave me a long time ago, is the token black friend in kind of your white circles sometimes, and explain that to everybody.
I would say my journey as a token black friend. I think that it's been that, and I didn't get language for this until recently, so I don't want to act like this is what I've always thought, but I am the quote unquote type of black person that people are comfortable with.
You're a safe black person.
Yes, I'm safe because I am black enough to where you can say I'm black, but I'm safe in the fact that I'm articulate and I'm intelligent and I'm.
When you say black enough, is that a skin color black
melanin,
enough?
Yes, I'm melanin enough.
You can be identified as yes, she is black.
On site. You know that I am. When you see me on site, yes, she is black.
Okay. Just making sure.
And she has a black family.
So that counts too.
Yeah. And I have statistically, I have, you met my grandpa, I have grandparents that went through segregation.
He's a stud, man. He's a stud.
No, I mean, don't tell him that. It'll just go to his head. So I have enough to be considered black friend, and then I have the black people temperament things, whatever they want to categorize it.
Okay, so what does that give? What does that give a white person when they feel like they have you as that friend? What do you think that kind of security or the benefits, or what does that falsely give us?
Wow. I think it gives a security because then they think, I think the thing that I've heard that's hurtful is they'll verbally say, well, if they would be like you, then they wouldn't go through that. Or I'm going to say, they'll say this thing about black people, but not you because, you're more white or you're different. Or you're one of those white people. Yeah. No, but I do have people who are close enough. You're like the white black. And I'm like, that's not a thing.
That sounds offensive.
Well, they don't know it's offensive. They're ignorant. But I think it gives the security that they understand the story because they know my story. So I think there is that assumption that, well, the reason that person's locked up is because they didn't work hard enough. And I know a black person and she worked hard. So therefore, it is that simple. But there's no recognition of my trifecta of growing up with a dad that said I was not had this really hard stance on you are black and you're a woman and you're never going to be able to use that as an excuse, but you're going to have to work harder. And that's how I grew up. I was pushed. And as a kid, it hurt and I hated it, but I was pushed. C's, unacceptable. That was punishable. I was pushed. And so what came out of that is a perseverance. But then I think that people look and they say, well, I mean, you went to school. And so I know this black person that went to college that has a career. And now I'm looking at this other black person that is poor and on drugs or has all these kids. And that's their fault. But they don't understand that for me, I grew up with a mom and a dad. I grew up middle class-ish. I grew up and went to a private school. I'm in a field, the mental health, which race is not a factor in mental health. And so I think that they assume that they understand the black person's story because they know me. And you don't understand, my story. You don't know everyone's story just because you know me. That I am not. Being the token black friend, I think oftentimes becomes, I know the black race because I know you. And we are not it is not a homogeneous thing. It's diverse, just like it's diverse in any culture. You can't say that you understand a person, like a whole group struggle, because you know one person. And I'm thinking that's the pitfall that people fall into, is that they get to know me and I'm friendly and I'm extroverted and I know how to make people comfortable so they feel comfortable. So they're like, oh, I understand the Black people struggle because I know her, but no, you only know my story.
Right. And so people feel comfortable with you. And I know, because we talked about this before, when stuff hits the fan, police shooting or Ferguson and Charlottesville, and it's racial issues in the country or even immigration stuff. And then you have, some of your white friends post things or give opinions on social media or, and you're like, what the bleepity bleep are you doing? And, just thoughts on that. Cause I see it. I feel it. I'm not Black, but I'm just like, holy moly, man. Why do you think that's happening? And how does that make you feel? And have you had, friends do stuff that you're like, yo, you're whack, man.
Wow. Whack.
Was whack too hard, or is that too 90s?
Is that the word you want to go with?
Well, I had a 4-letter word, but I'm trying to, I want Quinn looking at me like I'm crazy over here. So.
No, but we do need you to pick a different word other than whack, so think on that.
Dude, you suck. How about that?
So aggressive.
All right. Forget it. You know what I was talking about. So you just go on with your own little thoughts over there.
Oh my gosh. I would say, I will take us back. When Obama put himself in for the presidential election, the things that came out of people's mouths, I remember looking at my sister and being like, I think we're friends with racist people. Like, it was like terrifying, because it's like, I didn't know you felt that way. And I feel like that's the first time that on Facebook, that's when people's thoughts started leaking through. I don't know if you like remember the era of Facebook. We used to be like, how you feel? And people put like, I'm hungry. I'm having a hard day.
Just but like, what you're going through. Yeah, you're older than me, so I mean, I know.
Lord, yeah, I'm decrepit.
I'm just kidding.
But like, this was like the point where people were saying such harsh things, and so fast forward that to now, people will say harsh things, and I think that for me, for some people that post things, it is that scary thing of like, I didn't know they felt this way.
Right.
I had no idea they felt this way. And then I think I know that it's like, okay, they don't feel this, like for them, there's categories. Like there's like Black people and then there's you. And I just really dislike when they say, and I have Black friends. And I'm like, I'm not co-signing on that. You didn't ask me and I'm not co-signing on that. But I think there is this, for me, there's a hurtfulness. Like it really hurts when people that I'm close to, and at the time, people that I worship with and people that I serve with and people that I love and I know that love me, say something about the Black race and say something about Black people. And I don't know, I would say it hurts. The reason I think it happens is I think, again, I'm leaning on the ignorant word and maybe I'm being too generous, but I think that it is, I can't imagine being Caucasian right now. And I can't imagine being a Caucasian male right now because I feel like everybody's coming. Everybody's coming, Like,
coming for me?
Probably.
Should I be afraid?
Possibly. But no, I feel like there's such like a visceral, I don't know, I can feel there's so much anger right now. And I think it's uncomfortable because the knee jerk is, I'm not racist. Because I think that, this is what I think, and this is a thought, but I think that for some people, when you grow up being told that if you do the right thing, that everything will work out, I think that it rocks you at your core to think that that's not true. Yeah. To think that perhaps there's other factors, and maybe that's just the rules for you. Maybe the rules for you is if you work hard, then it will work out. But I think for some people, just that moment of unarmed Black guy gets shot and killed for reaching for ID or for moving or for not listening or for whatever the reason may be, I think there's like a searching for reasoning. Like, well, surely it's because.
It needs to be explained away.
It needs to be explained away because if I, for a second, step outside of my bubble and think maybe there is some stereotyping going on here, what does that do to your whole narrative? And I think that there is a luxury to not have to change your narrative, but I think that there is a fear in changing your narrative. Because if I change my narrative to this is wrong and we're dehumanizing the Hispanic people and we're dehumanizing African Americans, I think that that changes things. But for me, that's always been the narrative. So that changes nothing.
Well,
you know what I mean?
You can't look at things the same and live the same way. That's the hard part about it. It's like if you go there, then that has to bother you.
Yeah.
Like it can't just be, yeah, that's wrong. And okay, what are we having for lunch?
Yeah.
I need to go talk with people that are different from me right now because I'm seeing things a little bit differently and it might be true.
Yeah.
And even going, when you're talking about just going back to like segregation of like, okay, segregation, we're done.
Yep.
It's the law. Okay. All you have to do is work hard now and it's on you. And, I can't stand that sometimes. Like there's always going to be people and outliers that, they've made really bad decisions, whether it's for, drugs or alcohol or having a lot of kids or crimes or something like that. That stuff's going to happen in all races. Like you're going to make bad choices. But to just simply think that like, okay, segregation happened and everything is on you and everyone's on the even playing field right now. So suck it up and work hard or else it's kind of your fault.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy. But that's kind of how we treat stuff right now with race. And like, you don't have any excuses. So stop complaining.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, it's kind of dangerous. And it's, again, it's not hearing how a race maybe was neglected or a certain kind of people group is neglected either by a country or by the church or by by whatever, and just taking the time to listen to that. And hearing you talk too, I think the other thing is dangerous. It is hard to just say like, hey, you're racist. When you say certain words, conversation either stops or it goes to a boiling point where there's no conversation. It's just self-defense mechanism and fight or flight. So you call somebody a racist, that's a lot different than like, hey, let's have a conversation about this and tell me like, why you feel that way or kind of your history, your background, or why you saying this thing. That's a lot different. Calling someone who's pro-abortion a murderer. Yeah. Okay, that stops conversation pretty quick instead of being able to talk freely and openly and comfortably with somebody that's different than you. Those type of things just, but that's our social media world. That's what's frustrating. Yeah. It's labeling and calling you something so that the conversation's over. If I call you this, boom, it's done. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think much thought is being put into that because that's an emotional reaction. And I think that there is a lot to be said about learning to press pause, like biblically we're told to be slow to speak. And so I think that we are such a fast-paced culture and it's hard. I'm not going to sit here and act like I can do this well. But in my healthier moments, I can say, let's talk about this later. Because what's going to come out of me is going to be rage and it's going to be mean words. Because I think that's what happens is that people see something and it's such a visceral, like, you're racist. But again, what you were saying is that takes away the actual word. I mean, I'm a word person, but like, so I'm a counselor, but then I've also worked with kids on the autism spectrum.
You put her chart up on the screen.
But I also work with kids on the autism spectrum. And what I will say is my feeling wheel. But what I will say is even in mental health, you've watched that there's certain words that we can't use anymore that we've had to change because people have taken away the meaning of it. Yeah. Like, I don't want to say that. With mental retardation, we've had to change it because that was just a word that people use freely. And so I feel like the same thing is happening with the word racist, is that anytime we come against somebody that's like saying something that we don't like, then instantly we want to say you're racist. But like really, I feel like they're another category, which is ignorant. And maybe that's a mean word to say, but like, not knowing something just means you're ignorant. To me, there's more space. I would not call somebody ignorant. I'm not saying use that word, but I'm saying maybe approach them with the mindset that like, maybe this person I'm talking to is ignorant. Maybe they grew up different than me. Maybe that's just something that's been passed down generationally. And what I will say that was interesting too, what you were talking about, the segregation thing. One of my favorite parts of our Be the Bridge was being able to have conversations with my grandparents and inviting my grandpa to come and talk. And it's just, I feel like that journey, things start clicking for me, because like when people say it happened so long ago, that generation was the one that raised us.
Yeah.
My grandparents are still alive and well, and they've had a huge influence in my life, and they grew up being segregated. And something that just occurred to me looking at my mom's birth certificate is my mom was born in a segregated hospital. So it's not that far away.
Right.
So yes, slavery is that far away. But that generation of people who were segregated are still here.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that raised us. And just even talking to my grandpa and hearing from him, I don't know if you remember a lot of the stuff he said, but he did a lot of healing work before having an influence on us. And so there's still some things that they say that I believe are traumatic responses.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't dislike white people, but I hear a little bit of the fear underneath because of what they grew up as. Yeah. But they did the healing work. So what was passed down to us was not, to me and my sister, was not a white people are awful. It was more of a like, there was an edge of you need to be respectful, but it wasn't like a hate, because they did the healing work. Now imagine
if they didn't. Yeah.
Imagine if you are white or black and you are raised by a generation who did not do the healing work. What's going to be passed down? And we want to act like that's not a factor, and it is.
Right.
That's one of the scariest things, I think, like moving forward is the people who are going to have children that are going to put that on. I grew up in Louisiana, and so I witnessed a ton of racism and prejudice, and I grew up in the middle of it. Yeah. There were family members around me that they were racist. And these people are one of them just recently passed away, and so he has kids that are in their 40s, and it's a scary thing to think about. Now, luckily those kids are well-educated people, and they didn't follow that same road. But I guess I'm just curious, how is it different from whenever you were a kid to now? Like, has it changed? Has it gotten better? Anything like that? Because I guess maybe from growing up in Louisiana where I was at, it was, the plantations are there. They renovate them. There's restaurants, and so whenever I go back, I see change a good bit, but I think it may just be because it was so bad whenever I was younger. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that what this city does well is I feel like it's hidden. I don't feel like
they hide it well.
Yeah, like, 'cause I feel like people come here and there's this recognition of like, wow, y'all still have these plantations and these monuments. And actually, last Sunday or a couple of Sundays ago, we were at Forsyth Park, and there was a Confederate reenactment with cannons and stuff. And I think that that's jarring for people, because they're like, that still happens? Why are they in youth? Do they know that they lost? Why are they playing taps? What's happening? I think that here, there are people who have dulled their awareness. So I don't feel like it's bad in the sense of like, I feel like there are people who are discriminated against, and I don't feel like it's bad in the sense of like, here it is blatantly in your face. But I feel like it's bad in the sense of there's people who are refusing to be aware that this is an actual issue. And there are actually stories that are not being heard because you want to put the narrative of, well, they put themselves there. And if they would try harder, and if they weren't on whatever the store you want to wrap it in a bow to make yourself feel better.
As a whole, our society is healthy. So if there's a problem with a certain group of people, it's more on them or the people on the outside of that healthy society. Because we all don't want to admit that there's problems, whether that's a personal thing or as a race thing or as a culture thing. And it's not identifying or being honest with it.
Yeah. I heard this awesome analogy of like, just to use in counseling, but I think it applies here. But they talk about the fact that if you have a broken arm, you're going to like operate differently. Like, let's say you broke your dominant hand. You're going to use your other hand until that hand heals. But let's say you don't ever treat it. Well, you're always going to have this broken limb doesn't work quite right, but you're going to learn to work around it.
That's my finger right there.
Oh, wow. I'm speaking to your personal struggle.
Yeah, that is a very personal struggle right there. As my finger got broke, I thought it was just
you never fixed it,
dislocated or jammed, and then it healed broken.
Yeah, but like you learn how to navigate life, but it's still not right.
It ain't good.
It ain't good. But I think that that's kind of what we're seeing in our culture here, is that we've broken something is hurt, and instead of attending to it, instead of like re-breaking the bones and feeling the pain again and sitting in that pain and lamenting and grieving and letting it restructure so that we can operate at full capacity. What we've done is we've broken something, not gotten it attended to, and just kind of learned to work around it.
Yeah. And a lot of people are going to say like, well, what do you want to do? What can you do?
Yeah.
And, the easy answer is, like you mentioned earlier, is, well, it'd be great if we had a president that healed or did something. It'd be great to have a governor or a mayor come up and do something that unifies everybody. It'd be great if, all the pastors got together in all the churches in Savannah and all over the country and held hands and said, this is over right now, moving forward. Like, that would make us feel really good. But you can have all the events you want. You can make a law. You can do whatever parade and things you want to do. But again, that doesn't necessarily change anybody's hearts.
Yeah.
But we want somebody to stand out there, even like a celebrity or something. It's like, yes, let's say this is wrong and do this. But like, how are people actually changing on the inside? And again, if that doesn't happen in your home, that doesn't happen in your personal life, and then that happens with multitudes of people, then we're going to find different veils to put over our faces to have a false sense of security that things are okay. And then boom, police shooting happens or a riot happens. And then all of a sudden, nope, all these white people think this about black people again, and nothing really changed. So it's just like, okay, feel good. Something happens, combust, boom, and you see it again.
Yeah.
And that's, we talk about it too. That's kind of the scary thing. It's like, what's it going to take? Is there going to have to be like a horrible event that happens in Savannah or someplace else where it's just like people are like, okay, this is messed up, and we're going to have to do a lot of work to change who we are as people, to change this.
I think that's a terrifying trend that I've seen. If I just think about churches, like the churches that you hear about that are like, wow, look at this church that's done, like they are really heading the way in racial reconciliation and healing, and they're doing groups and they're diverse and they're working towards that. But then I think Cincinnati is one of them.
My hometown.
Yeah, and it took a tragedy. And that's terrifying to me, to think that that's what needs to happen to wake people up. And I don't want that. I don't want that for the city of Savannah. I don't want that for our country, that something terrible has to happen for it then to become something that we're like, wow, this is something we need to attend to. Like, I think and I know that that's something that is very human, and like, that's what we need sometimes. We need something bad to happen. I think that's where you see like the most like beautiful activism is when someone has exposure to it, because that's just who we are as people. Like, we need to like feel it. But I think that that's the scary thing, is I don't want it to be that way, especially when there's practical things we can do now. Because I think that the issue is, and I've been guilty of it, is that you want the big thing, because inviting someone that's different than you over to dinner just sounds so small. It feels like a raindrop in the bucket. It doesn't feel like it matters, but it does. And I think that saying, I'm going to attend this group that's going to talk about these issues feels like nothing. And I think that we want there to be something that feels like something from a person with a platform. But the small things matter. But it just doesn't feel like it does because it's not flashy. Because, I mean, I can put it on social media that, like, look at me, I'm having dinner with people who are different than me. But it doesn't feel like it matters. But it does.
And aren't feelings the problem in the first place?
I love feelings.
I don't. If we put the feelings, I call this Jovanna's feelings wheel.
Yeah.
Quinn, put that on the screen
he
for
has
those
an
that are watching.
relationship with this because he doesn't like to label his feelings. So I made him look at this.
I don't like being labeled, and you know that. And Jovanna, she's a counselor, and so especially in Rwanda, since I'm leading the trip, there's a lot of emotions that happen with other people, not necessarily me, but she assumes that I'm feeling stuff all the time, and she'll be like, I'll be honest, it was really annoying. So like we'd have a really long day of serving and being out in the country and doing all this stuff and pouring ourselves out. And at the end of the day, people are sharing about kind of their experience and stuff like that. And I'm just tired and I'm cool. Like, hey, this is great. I'll process it when I need to. And Jovanna's the type of friend and person that's always like, so tell me how you feel. What are you feeling right now? We just had a big day. Just, what are you feeling? I'm like, I'm not feeling anything except annoyed. So
no, that's not the word that you use.
You don't want to be the sad guy. You don't want to be.
No.
So you said that you felt, what was the word? It was so like
assaulted, offended,
no, it was something that was so like.
It was probably tragic or something.
No, it was. I wish I could remember what it was.
I think it was something where you were like in my space almost, was just like.
Well, because you were in the back of the bus and I trapped you, so that was wrong of me. You said victimized.
Yes, I feel like a victim.
Because you were in the back of the bus laying down, and I just went to the back and I just sat there like, "How are you feeling?"
I just wanted to be left alone.
And you can't get off the bus, and you can't jump out the window or answer the question. Like this is.
So anyway, she uses this counseling wheel. And she gave it to me. It's like, can you point to a word and say how you're feeling? I was like, no.
I don't like it. Listen, those personality tests.
You're not a big fan.
I don't want to be a.
Well, as soon as you get that label, then all of a sudden it's like, now here's how I can help you. Here's how I can heal you. Here's how I can assist you. And it's just like, I'm not feeling any of this stuff. I'm just here. I'm just good.
No.
I don't want to give you any.
I like that you're breezing over the fact that there was a reason I was asking that. Like you want to act like I was just like coming at you, but there was a thing that happened, and I was concerned.
You're always concerned,
and I wanted to be your friend.
She's a feeler. She's always concerned. She's overly concerned with how people feel, and that's why she makes a really good counselor.
Yes.
So I'm not going to negate that point. That's a really good thing.
Yes, feelings are important, and sitting in feelings is important. That's my plug-in.
Yes. Okay, that's true as well. Which. Go ahead, ask your question, and then don't let me forget the follow-up on that.
I had one other thing that I wanted to bring up. This chart right here.
Yeah.
This is, racial diversity in U.S. religious groups, and I just found it interesting. If you look going down, the closer that you get to Christianity, you see. Much less diversity. Muslim being the second, then you have Jehovah's Witness, Buddhist, and then whenever you start getting into Catholic, you see the numbers kind of start to skew a good bit in favor of white people until you hit, some really specific denominations down towards the bottom, Hindu.
Quinn, is this American or is this worldwide?
This looks like
it's the
US. Okay, I get you.
Yeah, and so I think that the solution to this thing it has to come from the church.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obvious that for the most part, I think in all churches in the US we do a horrible job at diversity and open-mindedness. And so my question is, let's say you're a staff member at a large church that is predominantly white with predominantly white staff, and the conversation does start with like what we were talking about earlier. How do we get diversity within the church?
Mm-hmm.
I guess how would you make your church more appealing for diverse people at that point.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, maybe that the churches hit a standstill where they want diversity, but they don't know how to get it. And so it just remains the same.
Yeah.
I got so many opinions on that.
No. And so I do want to do both. Like, I'll say what I think, and then I want you to, because you have you have worked in churches for the past 10 years or more?
Yeah, it was 10 before I left last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I would say is I think a place like this, you are dealing with a twofold thing. Like, I do think that there is an attraction to going to a minority church as a minority. So I think that if you are Latino or Asian or African American, there is that, I think that that's just a part of it. So I don't think I think that that's just a separate thing altogether. But I think that it really does begin with, if you are a part of a church and you're looking around you and it's a majority of one thing and you want diversity, I think that there is a point that you need to start asking some questions. And I think one of the key questions is, and I think that this is something that Western culture in general, we really need to wrestle down, is, are we worshiping Western Jesus? Are we getting into the messy of life? Are we going to those dark places? Are we going to the neighborhoods? Are we loving those people? Are we inviting them into our homes? Because I think that's where it starts. I think that if your staff is just sitting where they are and they're like, oh, how do we invite more people in? But you're not going to neighborhoods and you're not talking and having conversations, then that's not inviting. Because I do think that minorities do kind of fall more into a relationship stance. And I wonder how much of it is a trust issue too. But I think that's where it starts. And maybe that's coming from being so other-centered and relationship geared. But I think that, I'm not saying the head pastor has to do everything, but I do think it would be interesting if a head pastor of a predominantly white church who is also Caucasian male were to say, I want a more diverse church. I'm going to go to the neighborhoods and I'm going to get to know the people in the neighborhood. And I'm going to form relationships and I'm going to invite people into my home. And I'm going to start asking them questions as we get a relationship of, I'm not saying you have to go to my church, but I want you to come and tell me what you see and being open to that feedback, because I think that's where it starts, but it has to start at the ground level of a relationship. I don't think that you can just, pick out 5 Black people or 5 Latinos in your church and be like, tell us what to do, because there's that power dynamic. But what if you had a relationship so you could say, we've been in a relationship for months now. Now I want to hear from you honestly. Would you invite people in your family to this church? Would you invite people in your neighborhood to this church? Why or why not? What do you think we could do more to love our African American, Latino, and Asian brothers and sisters better? So that's what I think it starts. What do you think, Mr. Schultz?
Yeah, I think it's right on with that. And you just have to look at it. It's like, okay, this is our leadership. And why is it the way it is right now? Do we want it to look differently? Is it in a position where it actually could, or do we have a history of things set up so that it's really hard if there was going to be a non-white leader, whether it's a church or any other thing, really? I mean, it could be a PTA board at a school or something else. Why are we not as diverse? Do we want to be as diverse? And what's actually the roadblocks for that happening? Mm-hmm. Are we inviting people in at a lower level to be able to move up and engage? Because it's really hard. You can't just go from, okay, all white to now we want to be in 2 years half not white in leadership and influence. That takes time, but you have to identify, like you said, the steps in the process of what that is. Yeah. And first of all, it's people that are leaders inviting those other different types of people that are diverse into their life, period. Yeah. Not even just speaking from the church aspect. It's not just inviting them to a Sunday service. It's, I want you in my home. I want to I want to learn from you what you've experienced, because I care about you. I should care about everybody. Like, that's the love of Jesus. Like, I want to care. And I admittingly don't know that much and want to. Like, and so for me, it's just purposely even when I was a pastor, like looking at everything as, is it diverse? And there's not a quota, you know what I mean? It's like you're looking for quotas. I have to have this many people or this many experiences, but you start seeing things differently of everything you're doing. And like when, we talked with Cornelius before, like asking him to help lead the dads group at our school. Yeah, there's 2, 3, 4 other white dads that I could ask to do that, and they would have been fine. But it's just like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Yeah. Like we do want a diverse group of dads to help out with this group. And the best way for that to happen is to have a black and a white dad leading the group together. Yeah. Because that's going to symbolize and say something to everybody else. Like, yeah, you do want diversity. And that was just a very easy one. There's no criteria and stuff like that you have to fight through and red tape. It's just, but if I'm not thinking that way, then I never do it. And now our group is maybe just me and Cornelius and maybe one other black guy and like 10 other white guys. But instead we're super diverse. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, you do care. And that's a small thing. We want our small group at our home to be diverse. We want our kids' experiences to be diverse and who comes over our house. It's all those little things. And then that permeates your church and then your culture and then your leadership. And like, yeah, now we do want Jovanna's voice at the table. We can see us not being represented right now. We got all white men here at this level of leadership. We're not hearing anything about, someone represented from the black community or a woman in the black community. And so you can say all the right things in like a leadership meeting around a table inside your church, but if it's not personally happening, it's really hard. Because then it's just work. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're separating those things. It's work as opposed to like you. Yeah. And I think that's the hard part is that we can come together and say, man, we want this in our church. We want this in our church. Like, okay, who's going to lead it out there? Yeah. And tell us that it's happening Monday through Saturday. Yeah. So that when we talk about Sunday or in our Tuesday meeting, then it's already happening. So we're building a culture of it. Yeah, that's the hard thing. Like you have to make it personal. So all those little small steps, like you said, you want to see the grand thing happen. Even if you try to force a grand thing happening, it's going to fall flat because it's built on sand and not rock. You know what I mean? There's no foundation there. And that's the scary part for me, just looking at our country moving forward, the elections coming up, and there's going to be racial stuff thrown out there all over the place. If you're this party, you should do this, you should do this. And hey, we're for racial unity. And when it comes from a place of it gives me financial gain or political power or advantage, then that's nothing changing here. It's just people grasping for what they want to get. Yeah. And so race is going to be used again as a tool of divisiveness and people trying to get ahead. And so, conversations like this are, I think, really important. So people have a place to go to and not go crazy from all the craziness they see out there.
Yeah. I think as we are wrapping up, look at me. Let me tell you what to do. I think what would be really interesting is if we both kind of talk to what we think are the right now practical steps for people and what we think the hard thing for people is going to be.
Yeah. Easy steps to change, and then there's difficult steps to change. Yeah. I get it.
So now I'm making you go first. Does that make you uncomfortable?
I feel very privileged. Thank you. I think the easy things to change are you going out of your way to have conversations with people that are different than you. So when somebody's listening to this or they're wondering like, what can I actually do? Okay. If you don't have very many conversations with Black people, look to do that. Yeah. Okay. And not as a quota and like, hey, I did it, check it. I feel good about myself. Like, hey, I went to church this Sunday, so I'm all good for the rest of the week. But like purposely looking for conversations, whether it's in the supermarket. I mean, simple things. If you always go to the white checkout teller and there's a Black one there, go, just say hi and get used to it, and there's different levels of, okay, we do invite people over our house. Do we have a Black or a Latino neighbor or something that, hey, can you just come over? We want to get to know you. And engaging that way. Those are easy steps to have conversations with people. And you'd be surprised how willing just Black people are of like, hey, what's it like to be Black in Savannah right now? I mean, if it's the first time you've met and it's a little awkward, but like, you don't get asked that.
That's one thing that I wanted to ask, like with these steps and having conversations and inviting whoever to your home and stuff, is it appropriate to make it like that intention known?
I mean, I feel like it depends on the person. I feel like if it's like someone you already have a relationship with, so let's say you already have a relationship with someone who is African American, Latino, Asian, different than you racially. I think that if you already have a friendship and a basis, I think just being able to say to them, like, I am becoming aware of the fact that I don't understand everything, and I would just like to hear from you. What's it like being you? But I think that if it's like a neighbor across the street, that's a building relationship thing and getting to know them thing. And you would ease into that, because I think that it's twofold. I think that the conversation about what's it like being you is in there. But I also think an awareness happens when you are aware that you have a different narrative. So something that we learned in counseling that's really hard to do, that I 100% don't do well, but that I took as a tool to use in life, is when you're sitting across from a client, you have to take off your worldview lens and put on theirs. And I think that's something that can happen if people would be intentional about learning how to do this, is when you listen to someone talk about, like, just what was it like growing up for you? Like, where'd you grow up? Is a simple question. But taking off your worldview lens of like middle class, upper class, lower class, wherever you came from, and putting on theirs and imagining what must it have been like being them. I think that there's ways around just asking the direct question. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, you got to get over yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's hard about that. That you are putting yourself to the side. That's the hard part about all this.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to be able to identify with yourself that I have prejudices and stereotypes. I think every single person does.
Yeah.
And it's hard to admit that. And that might not be like an extreme degree, but there's all sorts of, like, we all have people that we look down upon a little bit for whatever reason. Socioeconomic, could be a racial thing, could be somebody from a different country, it could be of a different, gay, lesbian, bisexual, people, especially in the church, like, you can look down on somebody and not think they are as good as you. Everybody does that, and everybody's hurt and neglected in some way. And until you can admit that to yourself, even if you don't fully know what all that is, just being able to say, I'm not always right.
Yeah.
I don't have it figured out. And there's other people, even if I don't agree with what they believe or think about a certain thing, like, I should care about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do, honestly, without faith. That's why, like, when you say the church should lead that, like, they have to lead that, because there's a higher calling, and you're loving because God loves you. Like, if somebody doesn't believe that, then no, I don't expect them to lead in that, because you're like using your own strength to do it. And part of the healing in all this, and even in Rwanda, is like, church was heavily involved with it. Like, I believe there has to be a supernatural power sometimes to love other people in a way that you can't do on your own. You don't have enough strength to do it longevity wise.
Yeah.
And so, but if you can't admit that to yourself, or even ask somebody, hey, do you see any of this in me?
Yeah.
Someone that's close to you, like that's a hard thing to do. And to me, those are the difficult steps. It's like, we want huge change all over the place, but the real difficult step is, okay, is there some of that actually in me?
There's some internal work, but I think that I like your question, because I think that what that calls to is that this is going to be messy, and we're going to say the wrong thing. I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm going to speak to somebody, this culture is different than mine. I'm going to use the wrong word. I'm going to say something that might be offensive, but I feel like the hard step is going to be getting past that, because I wonder, and I think for most of us, that's what holds us back, is that we care so deeply and we don't want to mess up. Like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to offend somebody. So I'm not going to ask the question that I'm curious about, or I'm not going to engage. And I think that holds it back a little bit. I would say the easy step that I think of, and maybe I think this depends on your personality, but I think the easy first step is taking inventory of your friendship circles and where you hang out and where you engage. And when you engage, I think that there is a natural need and want to gravitate towards people who are the same as you. But I think kind of like watching yourself is the first easy step of, do I have diversity in my life, or do I just have one token Black friend or one token Latino friend? Now that I, can acknowledge that this is what I have in my life, what are some action steps I can take that I'm comfortable with? So does that mean reaching across the pew and going and talking to the African American or the Latino, or if you're a minority, do I need to have, some other voices in my life, or am I just around one thing or not enough, or am I not wanting to be around certain types of people? But I think really the first easy step, which is actually kind of maybe even falls into difficult, is looking at yourself in a non-judgmental manner and looking at what you have going on in your circles and in your church and in your work and what are you exposed to, and then moving towards, what does that mean now? That means probably that I need to be making steps towards saying hi to the neighbor that's different than me. I think that, Nick, your personality goes toward, like, you go towards people without fear. And I think that that's great. But I think that if you are a person that is a little bit more hesitant, then, doing things that are practical. But I think that really it starts with looking at yourself and what you have going on. And I think the harder steps are doing a study like the Be the Bridge. I think that was hugely impactful for so many people, including myself, because I think that it taught me to look at people through the lens of, where are they in the process? Are they at awareness, but they're overwhelmed? And so I need to treat conversations with them more gently. Or are they stuck somewhere? Am I stuck somewhere? Mm-hmm. But I think so much of this is what you said, is internal work, because this isn't yes, it needs to come from the church, but we are the church.
Yep. And that's the thing I like about this, is that this is church is not the building and expecting someone to do everything for you. It's like being out there in the community and doing what needs to be done and loving people that are out there hurting. Yeah. And the best way I think you can do that is give people a voice and ask to hear their story, so that you do understand them and can potentially help them in the way they need it, as opposed to the way you think they need it. Yeah. They're like, hey, come here. We got it all. We'll help you out. Or actually, what's more powerful? I want to come to you and hear what you're going through. Invite you to my home and hear about how we can do it together. Yeah. So that's the neglected. And we're going to wrap it up with that. And Jovanna, last question. I think we're going to put up her information. Jovanna is a counselor, so we'll put up her counselor. Yeah,
we'll get all that.
Email, and do you have a social media handle people can follow you on?
Not yet, no.
Well, not counseling, just personally.
Personally?
Yes. Can people follow you or be your friend? Is that cool?
Yeah, my friend on Facebook, yeah.
Is it just at Jovanna?
It's just Jovanna Nicole.
Jovanna Nicole, okay. Drop the Javis.
Yeah, I dropped the Javis.
Jovanna Nicole, you can check her out on that. And I mean, is it okay for a bunch of people to reach out to you and ask if you can be their token Black friend, or like it needs to be like a true friendship, right?
Yeah, it needs to be a true friendship. But I love conversation. And so they'll put my email on there. Like, I would love to hear from people. If you have questions, I'll answer to the best of my ability. But I'm excited to go on this journey, because I think that stories are such a gift. So. But
you are a great counselor. You really are, whether it's adults or children. And so if you have a friend or yourself, or you have a child that needs counseling, like, she is dynamite. So check that out. So we're going to wrap it up. Quinn, the producer, rocking it out as always. Jovanna, thank you for being here. And we don't have like a tagline catchphrase at the end yet. I think last time I just said, don't neglect yourself.
Yeah.
Is that kind of weak?
Weak sauce.
That is really weak. Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll help me come up with another one.
Yeah,
and we'll wrap
we'll
it up.
sit on it. But I will say, like, go meet someone. Go to the dark places. That's what Jesus tells us to do.
Okay.
Well, we'll come up with something.
Go to dark places.
Go to the dark.
You want me to end the podcast like that?
Go to the dark end.
Put yourself in danger.
That's a great counselor advice at the end of the show.
Go to the dark place.
Go to dark places.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, don't neglect yourself, and we'll check you out next time.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Jovanna. Thanks, Quinn, and thank you, City Church, for hosting. All right, we'll catch you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.